Hello, Laziali all over the world. Welcome back to another episode of Lazio Lounge. I'm Vittorio Campanile. With me, as you can see, Alistair McKenzie. Alistair, the fixture are out. So we have plenty of things to talk about. As we were talking before, I'm a little bit scared because the beginning of the let's say the reprise of Serie A, it's quite concerning for Lazio. I'm really scared. But we have plenty of things to talk about. How was your week, Alistair?
Well, yeah, I mean, it's not been too long since our last podcast, I suppose. It's been okay. Yeah, it started raining in Rome over the weekend, which I was annoyed about. But other than that, I've been fairly happy. I've been kind of waiting, to be honest, for some news on this, some sort of confirmation about what we're looking at. And yeah, today we got the fixture schedule has been confirmed, like you say, and I mean, it's pretty relentless. It's going to be a real kind of shift of gear for us as fans, as well as obviously those of us who are working around football. But the idea of going from nothing for 3 months almost into games every 3 days for Lazio, but in terms of Serie A, games every single day for I think there's 5 days without games in more than a month in total. So it's going to be a lot of Italian football for us to watch.
Are you happy about that?
I think so. But it might, after about 2 weeks of it, if I'm having to cover all these games and work around it all, I might get a bit sick of it. But we'll see.
There are two things about the fixture of Lazio that are quite funny. The first one is Lazio's never playing on Sunday, at least on the fixture that are out at the moment. It's Saturday, Tuesday, Monday, no Sunday. I don't know what's happening. Football once was every Sunday. Now it's every day except Sunday for Lazio. And the other thing, very important, Alistair, is that no 8:30 o'clock match for Lazio. It's 7:45, 9:30. Obviously, if you never been in Italy in the summer or never been to Italy at all, July, August, it's nuts to play football during the day. So it makes sense to play very late. It's a little bit like La Liga, right? Spanish football, there's the match that starts at 10:30 in the night. So it makes sense to having matches very late. But playing every 3 days, this means that pretty much Lazio has a day less of resting to prepare to the other match. So there are some question marks in the fixture for Lazio, I would say.
Well, yeah, I mean, the one thing you didn't mention is like you say, the two main time slots when almost all the games are 7:30 and 9:45. I mean, 9:45 is a late kickoff time, but obviously needed in that heat. But there is also a 5:15 in the afternoon kickoff time. We spoke about this a little bit in the last podcast and why that's controversial, playing so early. But they have only got 8 games in the end at that time. Lazio do have one of them in July the 11th against Sassuolo in Rome is going to be a 5:15 game. And the way they kind of calculated this was to make sure that none of the 5:15 games are in what they deem to be the hottest cities. So Napoli, Lecce and Cagliari. But Rome is still quite a bit further south than all the other cities that have been given 5:15 games. And Roma don't have one, obviously. So yeah, that is going to be a tricky one on July 11th. But it might be worth just quickly running through the actual fixtures as we know them, just to refresh people's memories.
Go ahead.
So June 24th, Atalanta away. June 27th, Fiorentina at home. June the 30th, Torino away. July the 4th, Milan at home. July the 7th, Lecce away. July the 11th, Sassuolo at home. July the 15th, Udinese away. July the 20th, Juventus away. And then finally, Cagliari at home on July the 23rd. There are going to be 3 more rounds after that, but they've not confirmed the dates yet. So, I mean, should we start with the start of this? I mean, this is what you mentioned before we came on that you were most worried about, is this run going immediately back into it of having Atalanta, Fiorentina, Torino, Milan. That's not an easy start.
No, and if you take Atalanta, in 10 days you're playing Atalanta, Fiorentina, Torino, and Milan, so it's quite challenging. Plus, we have to say, Alistair, we don't know if, for example, Lulic will be able to play at the beginning of the season. And, as you don't have a full week, if he's missing the first game, then there's a big chance he's going to miss even the second one because it's 3 days apart. So there's a big risk, not only a competitive start, a very difficult start, but we don't know if Lulic is going to be playing and other injured player if they're going to be fit. So it's quite complicated. It's quite difficult. Let's say that if we remember, this is the most difficult part of the season for Lazio. After Atalanta, Lazio then won all the matches, but it was a tough fixture because we won against Fiorentina, and that was, if you remember the podcast, we were talking about if Inzaghi doesn't win, does he get sacked or no? So it's quite difficult. It's quite challenging. I'm a little bit concerned, but we have to say at the same time, we have to see how Atalanta, Fiorentina, etc. are fit, because it has been a big rest. And Fiorentina is the team that had some players who got the virus, so we don't know.
Yeah. I mean, the one thing I would say is that it's, we have to think of it a little differently than we would when you normally have a busy period of fixtures. Obviously, sometimes you get these fixture build-ups in the course of a season and it's annoying and you wonder how you're going to handle it. But this situation is completely different because all the teams are in the same boat. All of them are, especially because of the way they've done it, where the opening weekend of Serie A is going to be a bit anticlimactic because it's going to be the four previously postponed week 25 games. But because they're doing it that way, it does at least mean that from there on, everybody's in the same position. So, well, hopefully, as long as there's no coronavirus cases within the teams and the medical protocols changed, which we're hoping for as well. But that's another discussion. One thing I would say is that it's obviously the one we were waiting for was to find out the date of the Juventus game, because that's, looking at the table now, certainly going to have a big say on which way the Scudetto race goes this season. And I think that the scheduling of that went quite well in terms of the fact that has ended up being Lazio's biggest rest period between games, is from the 15th of July against Udinese to the 20th of July against Juve. In any normal circumstances, I wouldn't be very happy with having those, your biggest game of the season only 5 days after another game. But in these circumstances, I think that's really as good as it gets.
Yeah, absolutely. One thing before I forget, we start away against Atalanta, but it's probably not going to be in Bergamo. It should be, where is it? At Sassuolo, I think, because Atalanta took the occasion of this stop to refurbish the stadium, so they won't be playing at Bergamo. I think they're gonna be playing Reggio Emilia. So obviously, anyway, the stadium will be empty, but this could be another advantage for Lazio.
Possibly. I mean, it remains to be seen what kind of impact this is going to have. I mean, it's been a big talking point in German football, has been the fact that the home advantage has very much been kind of leveled out, and there's been a hell of a lot more percentage of away wins than there usually is in that league. So it does go to show that even though you obviously would have certain comfort and familiarity of playing on your own ground in your own stadium and not having the travelling to contend with, the crowd does play a big part in these matches. So I guess we're not going to be as badly affected by travelling to Atalanta or Reggio Emilia, as it may be, than in the past. But we just don't know yet what kind of impact this is going to have, because the only thing anyone has to go on at the moment is how it's played out in Germany. But how it plays out in Germany and how it plays out in other leagues might be completely different. So in Italy, for example, I think the the traveling between games is going to be fairly arduous for some of these journeys in comparison to what they're having to do in Germany. I mean, if you're going down to Lecce or off to Sardinia or whatever it is, I mean, it's quite long journeys, some of these. So, yeah, I mean, it will be interesting just in terms of objectively looking at it and stripping away any sort of. It's not about the crowd. It's not about how that can influence the game. It's not about, it's all about how the players can motivate themselves rather than take motivation from the environment around them.
And in a certain way, this is good because if you watch Simone Inzaghi, he's a great motivator during the match. So this could be a big advantage. I mean, if you compare Maurizio Sarri to Simone Inzaghi, who is the motivator? I think we all agree that it's Simone Inzaghi, right? So Antonio Conte is another big motivator, but Inzaghi is quite good in that. So this can be an interesting fact. Again, we have to see because Lulic spoke last week and he said he's not going to be ready for the beginning of the season. This is a big, big question mark for me because Lukaku is still in Belgium. So I think, I'm pretty sure he's not going to play this year.
No.
In this week, Inzaghi moved Marusic on the left. Falbo has been promoted from the Primavera. So there are some options, but, I would be happier to see Senad Lulic back, even because Lazio's playing every 3 days. Do we think that Johnny is going to be able to play every 3 days there? Not sure.
Well, yeah, and this raises all sorts of questions because there isn't this great strength and depth, and it does make me wonder how tactically flexible Inzaghi might have to be, because he might end up in a situation where actually if he wants to keep his team playing the same style of football in the same formation, he's going to really have to put some kind of square pegs in round holes a little bit. And it might be a case of whether he's playing, Patrick as one of the wing backs, having not really played there all season. I personally think I imagine he'll go with Marusic on the left because that's something he was starting to do more and more before the break. So I don't think he's against that idea. But the reality is, with the physical demands of playing as a wing back in Inzaghi's Lazio, there's just no way these guys are going to be able to keep that up. 3 days between each game, and the depth in those positions, like you say, isn't very encouraging. And this is one of the key questions around this and how it's going to impact Lazio's title challenges. One of the questions we had on Twitter today from Alexander Mikkelsen, who said about the 5 substitutions, will the 5 subs benefit Lazio? I'm afraid it will benefit teams with more depth and it will give us a disadvantage, he says. So what do you think about that?
Yes, I agree that Juventus, probably Inter as well, has more options. But the thing is, we are playing against Atalanta, for example. Do we think Atalanta has more option? Then we'll play against Fiorentina. Do we think Fiorentina has more option? Yes, of course. When we arrive at the 20th of July and we play Juventus, and Lazio have played 8 matches already, maybe some players are worn off and are tired, and you need maybe more fresh legs, and Juventus have more option. So maybe for that match is going to have an impact. But if we think, for example, that the fourth match is going to be Lecce-Lazio, do we think that Lecce is going to be arriving to the match fresher with more option? No, I don't think so. It will be interesting to see if 5 substitution will help Inzaghi. I think in a certain way it could, because as we said, the wingers on the 3-5-2 are the one that want more. So maybe this could give the option to Inzaghi to subs both of them and still have other 3 options. So this could be interesting. Let's not forget that Raul Moro is going to be promoted from the Primavera. I think other players will come up. So I don't know. Maybe it's that this will help Andre Anderson play more, and he's a very interesting player. So against Juventus and Inter, I agree. Lazio has a disadvantage, but we're playing against Lecce, Udinese, and so on. I'm not sure that in that case is a disadvantage for Lazio.
Well, one thing I would say about this is that even if Lazio do have strength and depth in terms of what Inzaghi's been able to get out of his bench players this season. I mean, I don't think anyone can argue the fact that he has got better performances out of the likes of Patrick and Felipe Caicedo and Bastos than we ever really expected him to. But he's going to need that also from the guys who really, up until now, have been given a bit of leeway, and from myself as well as from Inzaghi and the coaching staff in general, in terms of your Dennis Vavros, your Johnnies, who are taking time to acclimatise and get used to this football. That kind of period has to end now, to be honest. We need these guys to be ready to play. We can't really afford to have this kind of, there's almost been this season the B team of the subs who are constantly coming on in games with, Cataldi and Johnny and Caicedo and Parolo, and then you've got almost the C list of guys below that who have been getting odd opportunities when they can. Those are the guys who we need to step up now, because I actually have quite a lot of faith in the B list of players that they're going to be able to continue that, because they've been pretty impressive all season. But we need more from, Bobby Adekanye. We need guys like this. Andre Anderson, you mentioned, is a good example. The Primavera boys, I don't think you can expect too much from those guys being thrown in for the first time. But guys who have been members of this first team squad all season and who have been wanting more opportunities and needing more opportunities, they are the ones who I think we're relying on at this point to really step up, because this is going to be when they're needed most. This is going to be when they're going to get their opportunities. So they really have to take them now.
Yeah, you're right. That could be a game changer for Lazio, And to be honest, Vavro, for example, didn't play that much because ahead of him, Radu, Acerbi, Luis Felipe have played great football, and Patrick as well. So, yes, he has been often injured this season, but last time he played well. So I'm confident that Vavro can step up. I'm a little bit more concerned about Bobby Adekanye. I don't think he's ready. I think in a couple of years he could be a great player. Not convinced that right now he's ready for Serie A. And I have the same question mark about Andre Anderson. In training, it's completely different. You have confidence. You're playing against players etc. When you go out on Serie A, it's completely different. So again, these are two players that could be very important in the coming years. I hope they can be as good even now, but I'm not 100% convinced. On Vavro, it's different. But Andre Anderson and Adekanye, it's another thing.
On the topic of the rotation and the depth of the squad, one of the questions we got that I thought was quite interesting from Jeppe Nielsen was, who will be Lazio's most important fringe player if we are able to be successful in this tight-packed schedule? So do you want to... who do you think?
I don't know. You're ready for this question?
Well, I thought about it when I first read the question. My mind was immediately drawn to Caicedo. I think he's the obvious one to think of first, because what you need to win games is goals, and we're not going to be able to rely on Correa and Immobile to spearhead the attack week in, week out. But actually, I thought again about it, and what I realised was that I actually think the area that we're going to need the fringe players to step up the most is actually going to be in the midfield, because those are the guys who are having to put in the hard yards, cover the most distance, and also in the way that Lazio play, Milinkovic, Savic and Alberto are so key to the way that Lazio attack, and Lucas to the way that Lazio defends, that they aren't going to be able to play all the games, obviously. And that means we're really relying on the guys who are going to step into those roles when they can't play to actually keep this team ticking along and keep them at a certain level. So the guy I kind of landed on actually was Danilo Cataldi, because where I think he's going to become really important is, one, in his versatility, the fact that he's able to step in for Lucas Leiva and perform not in exactly the same way, but perform in that role, and also cover as a mezzala. And two, he's also extremely adept, as we know, from dead ball situations, from free kicks, from corners. And I think in this new COVID football, where it's going to be hot, it's probably going to be slow, people are going to be tired, that as a weapon is going to become more important, I think, to have good dead ball delivery. And he's a really talented player, Cataldi, and we know that he can score goals, he can set them up, but he's not really been able to get a consistent run and put many consistent performances together. So I think he, for me, is probably the most important fringe player, because he's going to decide really whether that midfield can stay in the same sort of level when the key men drop out.
Interesting. Yes, I agree that Milinkovic-Savic and Luis Alberto have a very important role. They can be really, really important, because if football is going to be slow, then, Luis Alberto could be even more dangerous. I think Correa, can you consider it as a fringe player?
I think he's in the 11 if you're picking a strongest team, but that's cheating.
Okay, then I go on Johnny.
Yeah.
Because I think Johnny is quite fast, and especially in the second half when team were going to be very tired, he could make a difference. Or Adekanye could, with his speed. He could be, the player coming in the last 20 minutes when the defense is completely knackered, and he can, with his speed, create big problems. That could be a very interesting option. Johnny as well, I think he's fast. He can put the ball in the box. So, he can be an interesting player if, he comes in for Senad Lulic. I think speed can be even more important in the new Serie A, especially in the last 20 minutes when defense is very tired. Yes, you have 5 subs, but how many defenses are you going to sub, right? You cannot change 5 of them. It's going to be risky. You're going to have the attacking tired. So that could be a solution. I think speed is going to be the big difference. And on the other side, let's not forget that players like Milinkovic-Savic, that are big muscle, etc., they're going to struggle to get in shape in time, because they're not going to have friendly match. They've been away for more than 1 month, etc. So I think they're going to struggle. And speedy guys can make really a difference.
Yeah, I think the speed as well as technique. I think it's going to make it's going to make a difference. Speed. I think that it's going to be hard to really maintain that through the course of a game or through the course of a run of games. But the one thing I should say is Inzaghi does always use his subs anyway. So this is something that I read. Scudetto put together a piece this week about the kind of substitutions. And Inzaghi was the one who basically came out as using all 3 of his subs most often. And we know, it is quite formulaic generally when Inzaghi makes his subs and who he brings on. There's very rarely any big surprises. So this is an opportunity, I suppose, for him to essentially do the same thing, but just tweak it a little bit more. But I do think he is probably going to have to make some tactical tweaks in this time. I mean, you mentioned Milinkovic-Savic, but another guy I'm a little bit concerned about is Lucas Leiva, because he has had more injury problems, fitness issues than he has previously this season. Obviously, he's the wrong side of 30 now, and is in the decline as an athlete. This is going to be harder for someone like him to come back to full shape than it is for others. And he's so crucial when things are when everyone's fully fit at keeping that team stitched together. And there's no one really naturally in the squad anyway who can do the same thing. I mean, I mentioned Cataldi. Obviously, Marco Parolo has been played there as well, but he's even older than Lucas is. So it's going to be tricky to do what Inzaghi's been doing up until now, which is basically when he doesn't have one of his first choice guys available, he's been able to find a kind of slightly different answer to the problem, or try out a few different things, like when he tried Correa as a Med Salah, for example. He's experimented a little bit, but I think now it's more likely that he's going to have to turn those experiments into something more concrete, and he's going to have to face up to the fact that he might not be able to have this system every single time with the kind of two attacking midfielders out of the three and the one holding. It might have to be something a little different. I find it quite interesting seeing that Raul Moro had been promoted. I mean, obviously they're wanting a bigger squad. We've talked about him a little bit before, but there's a young kid who would be very interesting to have a look at. But it's he's a winger. It's like Adekanye, I suppose, is yet another player, and Correa before them, who's going to have to make that adaptation from a wing to a front two, unless Inzaghi's going to, out of the blue, just change his shape and have an alternative. It'll be interesting if he works on something like that during this time where he does have an alternative system set up in case he doesn't really have the personnel available to continue doing what he's been doing up until now.
Yeah, the thing about Raul Moro is he's still in Spain, so he have to come back. So it's gonna take time. As you were saying, he's a left back. He's a left winger. So I don't know how much he's gonna fit in this. One thing, I don't think Inzaghi is gonna change because there's not really much time between one match and the other, and so I don't think he's gonna try to experiment. Switching for a 3-5-2 to a 4-3-3. I see it very risky. So I don't know. I'm gonna be really curious to see how Inzaghi is gonna play out this match. Maybe the option is that Lucas Leiva play only one half for season, and Cataldi come in or Parolo come in the second half. We're gonna see. One thing we didn't mention is Lazzari could be a very, very interesting option because he's very fast, he's speedy, he's small, so he can get fit very early. And can be dangerous because we saw him. He is able to run 95 minutes non-stop. So, in this condition, he really can be a threat, a very interesting weapon for Lazio, even more than before. So, Lazzari and Johnny could be really interesting. Obviously, Johnny when attacking. My concern is when Johnny have to defend. But, yeah, that could be interesting. The other thing, Alex, that I want to talk about, my concern is Atalanta, okay? Atalanta is one of the best team playing football. And in the interview Gasperini did with Gazzetta Sport, they asked him, are you going to be doing that pressing all the time? And he said, yeah, we're going to do it 95 minutes because with this hot, etc., players are going to get tired. Well, even Atalanta players are going to get tired. I'm not so convinced that team like Atalanta, as Gasperini said, will be able to do it for 95 minutes. I think Atalanta could try to end the match in the first 45 minutes and then, collapse in the second half. And so, if Lazio does like they did in the Coppa Italia final last year, defending in the first half and coming out in the second, this could be an interesting way to beat Atalanta. Yeah,
there's no way Josip Ilicic is going to be pressing defenders in the 90th minute of that game. Atalanta are actually a really interesting case here in terms of what football's going to look like in these conditions. I think that on the face of it, they look like one of the teams that might actually struggle a bit more because they are so dependent on that really high energy system, which they're not necessarily going to be able to do. So in that regard, it's a bit unlucky for Lazio that we are their first opponents. But or do they have a game the weekend before? Actually, I think they might.
They have it on Saturday, right?
Yeah. So they'll already have a game behind them actually. So that's something. But it's just gonna. It's going to take a few games, I think, a few game rounds for us to really work out where we are. I mean, I think that the playing field is definitely going to be leveled quite a lot in comparison. It's not going to be exactly like picking up where we left off. Some teams will cope with this better than others. Another question we had from Jeppe Nielsen was about which of the top three teams has got the hardest fixtures to come. And so I kind of had a bit of a look at that, but then, and so I kind of do have an answer, but the point is that it's quite hard to really tell because, you might have teams that just flourish all of a sudden, after 2 months off, they've sorted themselves out, they've got the new coach and whatever it is, they might work better under these conditions with 5 substitutes, with a slower pace than previously. So it's very hard to tell. It's not exactly the same thing as just coming off whenever it was March when we last watched games. But I mean, yeah, sorry, to answer the question, they're pretty much quite evenly balanced, I thought. I mean, I kind of noted how many top 7 opposition each had to play, and Juve have got 4, Lazio have got 4, and Inter have got 3. So I think on paper, Inter kind of have the easier run in terms of opposition, but they've also got the most games, so it kind of balances itself out. The thing that's really interesting is really the ending of the season, Vittorio, because that's when you've got these massive games on the final day where we're away at Napoli, but Juve have got Roma at home and Inter away to Atalanta, and that's set up to be quite something if it's still quite close by then.
Yeah, the question is it going to be still close? We don't know. It's going to be really difficult. One thing is Lazio had a big advantage. They didn't have the European competition, but with this new fixture, this benefit got cancelled. So in a certain way, we can say that Lazio has a bigger disadvantage compared to before. On the other side, you have to say that Sarri and Conte struggle when they had to play a lot of match in short time, especially Conte. All Conte's team have struggled in Europe. So this tells you that he's not able to prepare correctly a match when he has only 2 days. And this is something we saw even with Sarri. I'm not saying Inzaghi is a genius, because with Inzaghi in Europe, Lazio had various results. One year went really well, the other one didn't go very well. So, but we saw that in the history of Antonio Conte, that is a manager with more experience, he wasn't able to do well in the league and in the European competition. So this is something that we have to analyze and see, if it's going to perform as well in this league, in this new fixture. So this could be the result. The other thing is, it all depends who you're playing with against and how they are playing. Milan could be out without Ibrahimovic. AC Milan without Ibrahimovic is completely another team that Milan with Ibrahimovic. So, maybe you have to play Fiorentina and Milan all in 2 days. But if Fiorentina is without Chiesa, etc., and Milan without Ibrahimovic, it's another match. It's completely different. So it's never easy to say how the fixture will work out. Obviously, if you have to play Inter, Juventus, and Roma one after another, it's going to complicate it. But overall, it's unpredictable at the moment, because you don't know how. We are talking about Atalanta. Maybe Atalanta comes out and it's completely rubbish, and we don't know it. We cannot say.
Yeah, and the injury point there is an important one as well, because that is something that's been really very noticeable in Germany, as being the number of muscular injuries, not always serious ones, but kind of tweaks and things that have been enough really to send players off and make them get substitutes and things like that. And I think we have to expect that that's something that's going to happen quite a lot. So, like you say, when you look at these teams on paper, when you think of Fiorentina, you think of the danger that you might get from Chiesa or Castrovilli, whoever it is. But it's by that point you don't really know what kind of team you're going to be facing, because I think there's going to be a hell of a lot of rotation, first of all, given the quantity of games in a row here, but also I think we have to expect that there's going to be quite a lot of players missing several weeks or whatever it is, or certain games through injury. So yeah, it's going to be a real to be honest, I think the whole thing is going to be a bit of a mess. but I think at the end of it, if we do get to the end of it, it will actually be fair enough. I'm quite happy to say now that I do feel like whoever gets to the end of this slog on top does deserve to win the league. I don't think it needs to have an asterisk next to it, because it's a different way of competing, and it is a different game, obviously, and playing under slightly different rules with the 5 substitutes and so on. But I think that the best team will still come out on top, given the challenges that they're all facing.
Yeah, I think probably the strongest team, the one that has more option, has a big advantage. So, this could be the big difference. And I mean, from the beginning of the season, we said that Juventus is the best team, has more option, has better player, but Lazio was making a miracle. My biggest concern is that Lazio was playing unbelievable football. After the stop, I'm not convinced that Lazio can pick up from where they stopped. So this is the biggest question mark. Who knows? Inter was really diving when football stopped. So who knows if they're going to continue in that situation or they're going to pick up, etc. Another big question mark is how the players are going to play. Are they going to be focused again, or is the mind already went somewhere else? Players like Lukaku went away, Higuain didn't want to come back. How are these players going to perform now that the football is back? Are they going to get back and get focused immediately? They're going to struggle. Who knows?
I think that there is so much natural chemistry in this team that Lazio are in a slightly better position than other squads might be. I think they really do gel and have a good understanding of each other by now. And there's so many partnerships and so on in this team where you can see that. Obviously, they're not going to be able to play together every week, but I think that that's something Lazio will benefit more than others from. It's kind of the same argument as when we were talking at the start of the season about that kind of consistency that Lazio will be able to rely on this season, where they've got the same coach, they've got pretty much the same squads and the same expectations, and whereas there's kind of revolutions going on almost everywhere else. And now, yes, those revolutions have either failed or they're a bit further along the line. But I think with this kind of abrupt stop to the league, the suspension, and then having to go away for a couple of months and get back into it, I'm hopeful that the Lazio squad will be able to do that a bit more seamlessly, perhaps, than some of their rivals, just because they've been together for so long and really struck up those kind of almost subconscious relationships with one another.
And the other point that it's an advantage for Lazio is probably the focus. Lazio players are 100% focused on the Scudetto. They know they can do it. It's, a surprise at the beginning of the season, but now they really concentrate on that. While Juventus players, it's not such a big desire for them winning the Scudetto. They still can win the Champions League. So, and the Champions League will start after the end of the Serie A. So, it could be that while we arrive to the last matches of the season, they could start thinking, hey, we have the Champions League afterwards. Maybe it's time to focus on that as well, concentrate on the Champions League, that for us it's more important. It's different. After you win it 8 times, I think you lose something, on focus, on the willingness of winning again. You don't have the same fire that you had if you never won it. So that could make a difference as well.
We'll see. Yeah, it's the one thing I've been thinking recently is that it's almost kind of got to the point where I've had to start thinking, right, I'm going to have to actually go back over articles I've written or podcasts we've done to kind of remind myself what my opinions are about this season, because it seems like it's been so long ago that you almost need a refresher on what's happened so far. So it's almost, I think it'd be quite nice to kind of touch on that again, just to kind of remember where we were. Everyone, I think, because of the situation, remembers that we're one point off the top of the league and so on, but it's worth remembering that this is still a position where Lazio are unbeaten since September in Serie A, which is absolutely crazy. And I suppose that'll be a special thing this season. If we do finish in August, it'll be an almost entire year of a season unbeaten.
Don't say it. Don't say it. Don't say it. Let's not forget that the first important thing for Lazio is qualifying for the Champions League.
Yeah.
That's the first target. Before talking about the Scudetto, the Champions League is the most important thing for this team. Lazio is 70 points ahead of Roma. They are 12 match, so it's difficult but not impossible. We saw in the past incredible collapse of this team in the last weeks. So I'm still concerned, and I still think that must be the top priority. Lazio must, try to start fast, maybe winning the first 3-4 matches to get the qualification for the Champions League. I don't know, it depends on the result of the other team, and then focus on the Scudetto. See, when there are 5 match missing to the end of the season, see, okay, we are these points behind of Juventus. Now let's go and do it.
Yeah, I don't think you can underestimate the importance of regaining that momentum as quickly as possible, because you can't really overstate enough how important that has been for Lazio to get themselves into this position. Because let's not forget, this was a team that was finding ways to win, in all sorts of different ways. Edging close games, scoring a lot of late goals, winning all the big games, really. Beating Juventus twice this year, then the Inter win just before the break. So I think we need to rediscover that momentum as quickly as possible, because I am a little bit worried that if you come back and lose that first game against Atalanta immediately, it kind of bursts the bubble too soon and you kind of have to rebuild. Whereas if they manage to get a result there, even a draw to be fair, and kind of build off it by remaining undefeated and getting back into a little run of form again, then that belief will filter back. I mean, I hope that belief is already there and it's stayed with them the whole time. But the fact of the matter is they haven't played football for so long that it's only natural that it's kind of dissipated a bit. So I think that momentum has been a huge part of this season for Lazio, which is why the timing of all of this has been such a shame. But I still think it can play a huge part in where they end up this season, as long as they can get back to it as soon as possible.
Yeah, I think the start is going to be really important. If Lazio can start, with a win, it would be huge. Even with a draw against Atalanta, we know it's a tough team for Lazio. It would be really important because top priority is still the Champions League. Unfortunately, when you stop, you don't know how you're going to restart. And the fact that Atalanta is going to play a match before playing against Lazio, I think it's a huge advantage for them, because maybe in the first one they're going to struggle, but they're going to be fit for Lazio, while Lazio players could struggle at the beginning to find the form. And so this could be a big advantage for Atalanta, big advantage for Atalanta.
I mean, I think it's the kind of game that might end up being 4-4 or 5-4 or something like that. And it's the two highest scoring teams in the league, don't forget. And it's a lot more unpredictable, I suppose, than it would be before. So yeah, I think that's going to play big parts. Obviously, the form of certain individuals as well, because although the team as a whole have been performing superbly this season, a lot of that's been down to the individual form of guys like Ciro and Alberto and Acerbi and Milinkovic. So we need those kind of key players to pick up where they left off as well. I think that's really important. We can't really afford for anyone to have to ease themselves back in or have a slump of form, particularly Alberto. I think he's absolutely crucial to all of this working. So no pressure, Luis, but come on, we need you, mate. So yeah, I mean, it does feel a little bit like stating the obvious. We need to win games and we need our best players to return to form as quickly as possible. But yeah, I think that those still are the crucial things.
Yes, absolutely. And then we have to see, the injury situation of the other teams and of Lazio. We know that Strakosha is not 100%. Lulic is out. Lukaku, who knows? Leva just recovered. So, there are question marks. But for example, Roma is without a goalkeeper who got injured. We don't know Juventus, the situation. Maybe now that training resume, maybe Inter will have some problems. So I think this is going to be the biggest thing that will make the difference. The injury situation of players playing so often and with a big break in between. It's going to be a game changer. Obviously, we said it. Without Luis Alberto and Ciro Immobile, it's a different Lazio. But without Cristiano Ronaldo and Chiellini, it's another Juventus. Same thing with Inter. So this is going to change a lot of values on the pitch.
Yeah, definitely. There's one final question we had, which I thought we may as well touch on before we go, even though I'm not really too keen on discussing the Mercato yet. But Judith Binsakanto says, will Sergei stay? It has been in the news a bit this week, to be fair, so why don't you have a run at that?
Yeah. Well, it's 2 weeks now that there's rumors about Sergei. The biggest rumors is that Paris Saint-Germain is making an offer. But what I heard is they offer something like 60 million euros, so it's definitely not enough. And now with Paris Saint-Germain signing Mauro Icardi, which I think at that price it's great. I'm astonished that Gazzetta dello Sport is saying that Inter did a great thing, but at that price I think it's a very good deal for Paris Saint-Germain. But anyway, I think after spending big money for Icardi, I'm not convinced Paris Saint-Germain will have enough money to buy Milinkovic Savic. There's Manchester United, but there's a big chance United won't get to the Champions League. So I think Milinkovic is going to stay.
I saw our friends at Lazio Land put out a tweet yesterday saying, okay, now that PSG have spent 50 million on Mauro Icardi, the Sergei Milinkovic-Savic rumours are going to stop, right? And then literally the next day there's a story saying that PSG are going to spend, I think it was 80 million on Maricic and Milinkovic. And I think we all know that that's not going to be enough to get Lotito to sell him. So the thing is with all of this, really, I'm not getting invested at all in any Mercato chat at all right now, and haven't been for the last 2 months. There's been a lot of it going around because nobody's got anything to talk about. But the reality of the situation is nobody has a clue what financial state any clubs are going to be in after all this. So it's pointless almost to discuss it. I mean, yes, Sergei Milinkovic-Savic may well get a bid from PSG after all of this, but we don't really know what position Lazio are going to be in, if they can rely on Champions League money or not for next season, which is a huge thing in terms of whether they'll actually need or be looking to sell, let alone what spending power other teams will have to actually be able to put in a bid for a player like that. So I should say as well, there's also a story, I think it was this week or last week, about the fact that he's just bought a new house in Rome as well. So, I don't think there's really anything beyond these odd reports that come out of nowhere to suggest that Sergei is moving on. So I don't think we really need to worry about it. But we just have to live with it, because we have lived with it for the last 4 years. It's just part of the wallpaper now, is transfer rumours about Sergei.
And there is something to add, that the only big league that is not going to restart is Ligue 1. So Paris Saint-Germain, like all the French clubs, are going to be badly affected by this. So I don't think Paris Saint-Germain has the money to spend big. That's why I think they made an incredible signing for Mauro Icardi, because we were talking about nearly the same price of Milinkovic-Savic for Mauro Icardi, and now they bought it for half of it. So this is a big signing for Paris Saint-Germain. And let's not forget, they're going to struggle this summer, because with Ligue 1 finished already, they're going to lose a lot of money. So, I don't think it's going to be a huge summer. Plus, the rumors are that the transfer market in Italy is going to open beginning of September and end in October. So we still have plenty of time to talk about. But obviously, good sport directors are already thinking and maybe discussing about the signing to do this summer, or better in September. So obviously, they're thinking about who signed, but I don't think there's nothing official at the moment.
Well, Tari today said he'd rather kill himself than reveal the name of somebody he's looking at as the next Milinkovic. So yeah, he's keeping his cards close to his chest. But yeah, I mean, I would say as well this, Sergei has been happy to stay this whole time, has never kicked up a fuss, has never been angling for a move, and that's while Lazio have been having worse seasons than they are now. So if he stayed for this long and now Lazio are competing for the Scudetto and might be getting the Champions League, then why would he choose this as his moment to leave?
Yeah, no, I totally agree. I think this is the summer where there are less chance that Milinkovic leave the club, honestly. So we're going to see. Alice, I think we can wrap it up here, right?
Yep, sure.
You don't have any stats.
We're not quite there yet. We're gonna wait for the football to come back, and then the stats can be brought back from the dead.
Well, I was thinking maybe something about Bundesliga, as it looks like you're watching a lot of Bundesliga these days.
Yeah, I've got nothing else to do, so.
Well, guys.
I did actually see a bit of Valen Berisha the other on the weekend. I saw him losing 5-0 to Bayern Munich, and he didn't look like he was having a great time. So that's my Bundesliga update for you.
Okay, that's not very promising. But guys, if you have nothing to do, then listen to our podcast. We had different things to discuss. We discuss Lazio icons. So, if you want to know everything about Gascogne, Beppe Signori, Alessandro Nessa, or the Lazio of the 74, the first Scudetto, you can listen to our previous podcast. Please rate and review our podcast on iTunes. You can subscribe to Spotify, Spreaker, and we are on YouTube now, so you can see our lovely faces. And if you want to support the channel, we are on patreon.com/Lazio Lounge. Membership starts at just $2. Good night, Alistair, and we're going to talk next week, but still no. I'm sorry.
Cheers. See you soon.